Good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Good. Great.
Good. How many first-time visitors? Well, for those of you that I haven't met, my name is McCrea. I'm the oldest grandchild of Joel and Francis, so I just wanted to take a minute to welcome you all and thank you all for being here. We have a special guest here today, and I'm not going to introduce her, but I'm going to turn it over to our lead docent here, Miss Betsy Metzgar, who is going to introduce our special guest today, who's going to introduce our film today.
Oh, we are delighted that Margaret Talbot is here to introduce our movie today, which is Our Little Girl. It stars Shirley Temple, Joel McCrea, and Margaret's father, Lyle Talbot. Now, Lyle Talbot and Joel McCrea made two movies together. The second one was called He Married His Wife. And the very first movie that Francis D made, or the very first movie that Lyle Talbot made, he appeared with Francis D, who is Mrs. Joel McCrea. And that movie's called Love Is A Racket. And after we show Our Little Girl, stick around, we're going to show the 3-minute trailer for Love Is A Racket. And you don't want to miss the scene where Lyle Talbot and Francis D first meet. It was directed by William Wellman. His son wanted to be here today, but he's here in spirit. So Margaret has written a wonderful, fascinating book called The Entertainer, Movies, Magic, and My Father's 20th Century. And as the title implies, in telling her father's life story, Margaret also tells us about the history of American entertainment in the last century, because Lyle Talbot was involved with all forms of entertainment. And those of us of a certain age remember him as Ozzie and Harriet's next-door neighbor, Joe Randolph.
Oh, we know him.
He's the one who always borrowed tools and never brought it back.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Around the other way so we can see the front of it.
Oh, yeah.
Not in front of your face.
You can get it on Amazon. Highly recommend it. It's beautifully written, and that's because Margaret is a professional writer. She's a staff writer for The New Yorker, and she's written for many other acclaimed publications. Margaret lives in Washington, D.C., but we managed to schedule her to be here at the ranch when she's visiting family in California, so we are delighted to have her here. Please join me in welcoming Margaret.
Everybody, it's so great to see you all. It's so great to be at the ranch and to get a tour of this beautiful place. And I have my oldest friend from second grade is here with me, and my son and his girlfriend. So I'm very excited to be with all of you and to have them with me today too. So I'll just say a little bit about my dad. He came out to Hollywood in 1932, and as Betsy was saying, his first movie was this William Wellman movie, Love Is A Racket. And he had kind of a crazy career even by then. He was 30, and he had been born in a really tiny town in Nebraska. But he was a handsome, affable guy, and he kind of had this notion of getting into showbiz, and so he started off as a hypnotist's assistant, having rocks broken on his chest by the hypnotist when he was allegedly in sort of a deep trance of some kind, and he'd be kind of lying there between two chairs. And he was the shill in the audience often, and then he was a magician, a touring magician throughout all these little towns in the Midwest, and then started doing theater, and eventually, when he was doing a play in Dallas, was identified by a talent scout from Hollywood who gave him money for a train ticket because he was out of a job, as actors often are. He had finished the play, and he was broke. So the talent agent gave him some money for a ticket, brought him out to Hollywood. And he arrived, and it was time for him to do a screen test at Warner Brothers, which the agent had set up. And so he was very excited to do that, and he had to pick his own material to do for the audition and for the screen test. He wasn't sure what he would do, but he decided to do a play that he had been appearing in Dallas and had had some success with. And in the play, it was called Louder Please, was by a playwright named Norman Krasna. And the idea was that he would play a studio boss, a big sort of swaggering studio boss who was very brash and kind of obnoxious and really an anti-hero, but he thought he did very well with this part. So he went, he did the screen test, and it was filmed by a studio cameraman who was available, and felt very good about it. And afterwards, the cameraman came up to him and said, "Was that from a play called Louder, Please?" And my dad said, "Yeah," very proud that it had been recognized. And he said, "Huh." Kind of backed away, and then he said, "That play is like completely verboten on this studio lot. It's about Daryl Zanuck, who is the production head at this studio that you're trying to get in with." And so my father, to his horror, he was kind of a country boy at that point, said, "Can we get rid of it? Can we refilm it?" And the cameraman said, "Well, no. I mean, I've got somebody else coming in next. Your history, pal." So he went home, and a lucky thing happened to him. He thought it was over for him. He thought that was the end of his Hollywood career. He'd go back to Nebraska or wherever. And it happened that Daryl Zanuck was watching that afternoon, as they did, the different tryouts, the different screen tests by actors who'd come in and actresses. And William Wellman came in, the director. He was a great director, and had kind of an anti-authoritarian sort of puckish streak. And he came in and was watching this screen test, and Daryl Zanuck was sort of harumphing. And Wellman turned to him and said, "I like this guy. I want him for my next movie. Hire him." And Zanuck, for whatever reason, he caught him in the right mood, said, "Okay, I'll do it." Kind of on a lark, I guess, or who knows. But anyway, he did. And when my dad showed up and had his first day on the set, he'd done a few takes, and Wellman came over to him and said, "Talbot, you're great. And my dad said, "Oh, thank you. I tried. This is my first film." And he said, "Oh, not in the film. I mean, you're okay in the film. But what I mean is, you were great because you really stuck it to Zanuck. You have a lot of guts. You guys are in the theater." It's like, "Yeah." And my dad said, "Oh, no, you don't understand. That was a complete mistake. I would never have done that." But Wellman would never believe him. So they made several films after that, and every time Wellman would come up to him on the set and say, "Good job, Talbot," wink at him, So after a while, my dad just thought, "I'll go with it," Anyway, he went on to, be signed to Warner Brothers, to have a successful career. He never became a big star, but he loved his career, he loved his life, and he felt very, very lucky. And he really conveyed that sense to us, that you are so lucky when you get to do what you love. And that was a real gift to his children. So he acted with a lot of the greats, with Humphrey Bogart, with Betty Davis, with Joel McCrea, with Carole Lombard, Mae West, Spencer Tracy, and he dated some of the greats as well, Loretta Young and Alice Faye and others of that era. He dated quite a bit. And he continued to act, into the 50s. Had a strange decade in the 50s, going from Ed Wood movies, some of you may know Ed Wood, and Night from Outer Space, and Glen or Glenda, to Ozzie and Harriet, a regular on Ozzie and Harriet. And at the same time, my brother, Steve Talbot, was a regular on Leave to Beaver, so they would sort of go off together in the morning to kind of create America's ideal family. A family is on screen for us. And so he continued to act in episodic TV and theater, up until close to when he died, which was in 1996, when he was 94. I remember in the 80s, he did when he was in his 80s, he did an episode of St. Elsewhere, which was a relatively new hospital show at that time. And Denzel Washington was his doctor, and it was one of those scenes where, the hospital shows where he was in bed the whole time. I'd have him in bed with the blanket up, maybe had an IV or something. And I remember him coming home and saying, "This Denzel Washington, I think he may be going places." And my dad was a very sweet man, but he had a certain actorly vanity. And for years, I think he kind of took credit for Denzel Washington's career. He would say, "See, I told you about Denzel." Anyway, and so he felt lucky in his career, and then he actually felt very lucky in that he eventually met my mom, and it was his 5th marriage, but 5 was the charm. So they were married for 40 years. She was 26 years younger. but until she died, actually, she died first, and I'm the youngest of their 4 children, and he felt very, very lucky for that. So even though he never became a great star, when I was writing this book, I would find things like memos in the Warner Brothers archives where Jack Warner, and they're going back and forth saying, maybe if Talbot grew a mustache, could we try him with a mustache like Clark Gable? And then you try, nah, no, that's not working either, you know. So, but he had this, you know, working career as an actor. And was very happy about it. And this movie, I remember him talking about the movie we're about to watch because he really loved people who were sort of like troopers like him, who knew their lines, who showed up, who were, you know, hard workers. And he always said that about Joel McCrea and actually about Shirley Temple, who was only 7 in this movie, and, you know, but had kind of the weight of Fox Studios on her tiny shoulders, and was so popular, of course, in the Depression era. And you know, Franklin Roosevelt, you know, praised her for providing people joy and distraction in these terrible times and everything. I remember there's a scene in this movie where she says to my dad, you'll see, my dad's character, you know, you're something about we don't like you, or you know, you're not a good daddy. And I remember being very upset when I watched that as a kid, actually, because I would say, yes, he is a good dad. But she did say to him, you know, she had an incredible photographic memory. Supposedly her mother would read her the script, and she would memorize the whole script, including everyone else's lines. And when she had these lines to my dad saying, you know, I don't like you, we don't like you, she said to him afterwards, now, Mr. Talbot, actually, I do like you. It's just that this is what the script says. And my dad always said that she wrote we have this photograph, one of the first cursive autographs she ever did to him. It was sent to Uncle Lyle, and it was, you know, written in her, I guess she was just learning to handwrite. So anyway, it's a fun movie. And oh, look out for, in the circus scene, there's a guy with the wonderful name Poodles Hannaford, who was a famous trick horseback rider. And so he's actually in this movie, and you know, kind of fun to keep an eye out for. So please enjoy the movie. So happy to be here, so happy to have been invited. And thank you, Betsy, for the lovely plug about my book also, which I appreciate very much. Thank you.
Hello, Molly.
Hello.
Well, what's wrong?
I don't like to be tricked up. Except by my daddy.
But he's not here just now, Molly. What'd I do?
You don't know how a daddy does.
Well, maybe I could learn.
It's very hard to learn, sir.
Well, look here. Let's have a try. Let's pretend that I'm the daddy and you're the little girl.
I am the little girl.
Well, all right. We're just pretending. Now, here I come. Now then, young lady, you give me an account of yourself. Any cuts, pains, bumps?
That's not like a daddy.
No. Well, why not?
You were laughing. You're supposed to laugh inside. But if you laugh outside, that spoils it.
Oh, Molly. Why don't you like me, Molly? I like you. I like you and your mother and your daddy.
I don't care. We don't like you. We wish you'd go away and never come back.
Who is we, Molly? Your mother? Are you sure?
Taking the day off, Boynton. Important business.
But the experiment.
I said important business.
Here comes Daddy. Here comes Daddy. Hello.
Hello. Well, how's my sweetheart? Here I am, almost as good as new.
You were almost late, Daddy.
Almost never won first prize. Say, where do you want us to sit?
Oh, as if you didn't know.
No, honestly, I've forgotten.
Forgotten where we sit when we picnic at Heaven's Gate? Why, Daddy. Have you forgotten too, Mommy?
Mm-hmm.
Do I have to tell you?
Afraid so.
Right over there, where we always sit every May in September.
Here we go.
This is the trailer to Love Is A Racket.
Oh.
And the setup is that Lyle Talbot plays a gangster, Eddie Shaw. And the character played by Douglas Fairbanks Jr. is introducing his girlfriend, Frances D., to the gangster, Eddie. Listen for his response.
I mean it. Tell me, did you ever, well, make passes at it?
No, I haven't gotten around to that yet. Telephone always rings, somebody comes in. You know how it is. Oh, Miss Woodhouse, this is Mr. Eddie Shaw.
How do you do?
Swell. And if I felt half as good as you look, I'd go out and kill myself while it lasted.
Diplomatic, babe. Here comes your weakness.
Oh, I'm sorry. You don't know Sally Condon, do you, Mary?
Oh, how do you do?
Very well, thank you. Just a slight touch of leprosy.
Babe, you got my vote for the Guts Championship of the world. But you pulled an awful boner, leaving those behind.
I'll have a mic stand, start talking and talk faster, I'll go nuts.
Jimmy, you know, I'll never spill a word of it.